Rick Ross dropped Richer Than I Ever Been.
Mm-hmm.
And 12-track album. We thought it was going to be 10 tracks. He gave us Hella Smoke with Wiz Khalifa. And he
Mm-hmm.
added something else. But off top, man, what was your reaction after hearing this album, man?
It's a very well put together album. It's one of those moments where you really have to give Ross some credit because of how uneven the last album was. I think the last album was probably his most lukewarm reception that he had gotten in a while.
Mm-hmm.
I also think rap was kind of transitioning literally right when he was making that album, and he is transitioned back in, no pun intended, like a boss, Mike. Like this album is pretty dope. I was wondering with him and Big Boy's album, I was wondering like, man, I was like, are these top 10ish like rap albums to you this year? Because it kind of felt that way, especially with Ross's album. Because when I go through the 12 songs, Mike, there's only really one or two tracks that I think really don't hit the mark. I mean, beat wise, we know who he is. I mean, I think it's fair to say, Mike, isn't he the best beat selector ever?
He's one of them. I mean, to say ever is very, very high marks, and it's one of those things that I think we might need to do a tournament or a discussion
Yeah,
on. But he's up there.
yeah.
He's one of those people. When I listened to it this morning, I thought about how I feel about when I listen to a Travis Scott album. Right? I know that they're going to be working with some of the usual suspects in the music industry, right? But they
Hmm.
sound different when they're working with them. We're gonna get to that in a
Yes.
second. Hearing Benny on this song that he's on, it's like,
Hmm.
bro, this is what we've been expecting, and that's what me as a Benny the Butcher fan. When he releases an album, that's the level of a production and output that I'm expecting from Benny. We'll get to that in a moment, but saying all that to say, when somebody is on a Ross effort, you're going to get the best out of them. The only time I don't think we got that, and I appreciate the fact that they tried something different, was Future on Warm Words in a Cold World. Love the track. I love the whole Ill Bomb sample. I forgot the original, but the flip on that, I love that. I think Wale did his thing on there, but I don't think Future was utilized in the best way he could possibly be utilized. But I will give them high marks for doing something different with Future that most people wouldn't attempt to do.
So I mean, so since you're starting off by talking about all the features, do you kind of want to unpack the features?
We can do that, man. Shout out to everybody in the room, man. People are saying that P. White says the best beat selector. Tell Eminem, Big Coop. What? Tell him. No, I'm sorry, not Eminem. Why am I putting Eminem in this? He said, "Tell him, Coop." He agrees with you. When I see M, I just think Eminem in
Just
this group.
stop. Just stop. Just no. It's early. You
Andrea
just
Green said Rick
started.
Ross and the Game are the best beat pickers in rap. So go ahead.
No. I mean, let's start with. I mean, so what's the first feature? Benny's feature.
Yep.
So Mike. So I'm gonna say something to you. Like when I heard the verse, I thought like this is his first or second best verse this year. I thought his verse on Hell on Earth 2 was probably his best verse. I think this verse is better than that. That would
This
make
verse
it
is
his
better
best.
than that. Yeah.
Yeah, this verse is better than that. That would make it his best verse this year. And I was thinking, is that a verse of the year contender? Because I've been currently like working on the verses of the year list.
Mm-hmm.
It's a lot of great verses this year, and so I need to kind of like check the stats to see if that's going to make it. But that's his best verse this year. Ross does an excellent job as well as anybody. And this is something that I guess we're old heads now. People from our era can appreciate. Ross does wonderfully what his great predecessors does, in that he brings you into his world, and you
Yeah.
perform in that world. Mike, you and I have talked many times about how there are really a whole lot of features on Aquemini, and it still very much feels like Outcast World and
Yeah.
Outcast album. Ross does a great job of that with his features. These are no different, you're right, except for the future moment. I think the most surprising moment, Mike, is actually the song after Warm Words in a Cold World. It's Wiggle. Dream Doll came off nice to me,
I was gonna
Mike.
say that. Yeah, I'm with you. Dream Doll did a thing on Wiggle, and I think
No,
it's a
she did
banger.
her thing, Mike. No, Mike, she got down. That's what I'm saying. Is it's like That was a nice moment of her. That's probably going to be a single. Mike, we already
Yeah.
know we're in Atlanta, so we already know where that's playing. So we already know where she getting love at. Like with that, you know what I mean? And she snapped on there.
Deontay
Mike, while
Smith says something that I was hearing in the barbershop earlier. Said, interesting to see. There's no Meek on this album. That is
Mike,
interesting.
that's one of my notes. But let's go to the other guy who is. Wale's having a nice year, Mike.
He is.
Wale snapped again, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, he made a dope album this year. His features have been dope. Wale's out here performing. You know, he is.
I like where
I
Rick
think
Ross is in his career. I know we're talking about the features, and this kind of goes in line with that. And I agree with you. Ross does a really good job of welcoming artists into his world. But I think also, kind of in a like my beautiful dark twisted fantasy type of way, people who come into Ross's world or on his albums and on his production, they understand the moment. And you're going to get the best out of people in that way too, because they know that, okay, the production's going to be there. This is going to get circulation. And Ross is always going to do his thing on the record too. So Ross has a unique way of kind of really showcasing people, because I know he said something about the Benny feature. He felt like it was his responsibility, being at the place that he is in his career, to expose a lot of people who might not be familiar with rappers like Benny to them. And I think all the artists that are involved in that understand that moment, and I think that's a wonderful place to be. I think we've seen Snoop Dogg be in that place this year as well, where you're opening the doors to your fan base and putting people in the best position to, do their best job. 21 Savage is another person that people are saying in the comment section. I mean, pairing 21
Mike,
Savage with Jasmine Sullivan, I mean, that's a different thing. That's one of those things that only Ross could do. He's
Mike,
Ross is a
Can I say
curator.
something?
He's like West Side, right?
Mike, I was about to say when the guy was picking the game, I was about to actually say like West Side's right there too. But you want to know what Ross does, and this is what I mean. Like he's the best beat picker ever. Like Mike, people jump on his album, and like the shit becomes a movie.
Yeah.
It becomes a movie when they jump on Raw shit. Their shit don't be a movie. They on Raw shit. It's a whole movie, and then he kind of lays it out for it to be a movie. Mike, this is one of 21 Savage's best moments as an MC. Mike, Outlaws might be the highlight of this album,
It's
and
the
and
single.
it goes to the beat selection, the selection of placing the artist properly, and the artist understanding the moment and performing. It comes off,
Yeah. And
So it's really
again, when you see that track list, or not the track list, but when the single was released for Outlaw and we saw Jasmine Sullivan and 21 Savage, it's like, oh, this is an unlikely pairing, but I want to hear it. And they didn't disappoint.
No, Mike, it's one of the highlights of the album. Even when you're saying warm world words in a cold world, Mike, the record is dope, and Future's actually dope on there. Mike, it's just not what
Yes.
we're used to hearing from Future.
No, when I
But
heard the track, I was like, oh, okay, this is different.
and he's actually rapping.
Yeah.
Like he's not on tune. He's not harmonizing. Like no, he's like on his bar shit. Like he's like almost Dirty Sprite time with it when he was like rapping still.
Now,
Yeah.
you know what? We're talking about features, and I don't want to jump around or anything, but again, in the barbershop today, I was talking about the Rick Ross album, and since the Russ album came out on a Wednesday, that was a topic of conversation as well. And a lot of people were really, really floored by, the Russ album, and some said it was better than the Rick Ross album. But see, the thing is, it's so different. And I think you pinpoint this when you said that it still feels like Rick Ross's album.
I was
And
just
that
about
is the
to say
only thing with something like a Russ project or what he just put out. Not saying that he can't make his own project, but this project is kind of not his. It is his, but it's like, and one thing I asked the people in the barbershop, I was like, well, is there a song on the Russ album where he outshined his feature? And nobody could give me anything. And that's
well,
no
that's a
knock to
problem,
him,
Mike.
but that just lets you know that they're not coming into his world.
Right. And so what do we do? So let's say, okay, so if we're just like checking all the boxes, the Russ project is a better project than the Rick Ross project, except for one thing that matters. It's like, well, no, this is Rick Ross's project. It feels like Ross's project. He's bringing people into his world, and it's a quality enough project to put up against the Russ project. It's like, well, which way are you leaning? Because, like I said, the problem with the album is that it, with Russ's album, I'm saying, is that it sounds like a better done version of Peter Rosenberg's album this year, The Real Late, and the Static Selector from last year. It just sounds like that's that done better. When an artist slash producer does that, that actually takes away, not adds.
I agree. And what I was gonna say was the only way that I could really give Russ, I guess, high marks against something else is if he produced the whole album, right? If this was like a 2001 situation or Chronic situation or something like that, and I know people are gonna say, okay, Dre had help, whatever, whatever. But this Russ thing is a little different because you got the Alchemist producing stuff. You got Static Selector producing stuff. You got Ninth Wonder
Harry
producing
Fraud.
stuff. Harry Fraud producing stuff. And it's like, okay, it's hard for me to really even compare this to an artist that's basically making their own effort. So yeah, it's a compilation.
Right.
It's what it is. At
Yeah.
this, it's a compilation.
Right. So where it's going to be probably ranked on our list is kind of going to be more reflective of artists making projects that are their projects. So it's only going to be ranked better than the projects that it's just clearly sounding better than. That's where it's going to fall.
It's just so
Like,
hard
so,
to rank any of those. Like you said, when we were talking about the Static Selector, and that was at the end of the year last year, and it was dope, and it had some great. It was putting some great people together. Obviously, Static Selector's a dope producer, but it's hard to really put those against an individual artist who's, you know what I'm saying, doing their own thing. It's almost
right.
like putting an all-star team up against a regular season
College players.
team.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, okay, we're gonna put like the Grizzlies up against the Eastern Conference All Stars or something. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, it don't hit the same. That's why when the whole Russ thing, it's like album of the year. And you know, Mike, we're doing our yearbook. And so, like, I'm going back and I'm listening, and I'm like, well, no, I can't put this ahead of Isaiah Rashad's album. I
Yeah.
can't put this ahead of Tyler's album. I can't put this ahead of Nas's album, ahead of AZ's album, ahead of West Side's album. It's their albums. It sounds like their albums. The material is there. In the case of Nas's shit, it's like superior still, even with all the help that he just got. King's Disease 2 is still a superior album. Like, I played them back to back just to, like, give it some run. There's just levels to this shit, Mike.
I gotta give you. I gotta refute you on one thing, and I hate to say this, and I'm a West Side fan. I somewhat, on some levels, feel West Side's album as somewhat of a compilation in a way. And I think
How
because
about
it's
this?
so large, I think it's been very difficult for me to even rank it, especially since we want A and B to be considered one. And with all the people that are on it, all of the producers that are on it, and again, the same could really be said for West Side in this circumstance is what we're saying with Russ. It's really more about the features sometimes, and so it's very hard for me to rank it. I'm not saying it's as much of a collaboration as the Russ is, but it's hard for me to rank it when we're talking about other individual albums. Like you said, the Isaiah Rashad, it's hard.
So, Mike, specifically, like just in my early rankings, I probably have the Russ right after the West Side,
Right.
like with how it's fallen. But let me tell you how and why it's falling that way right now. And I'm not done going back and listening to all the projects in full. Yeah, I just gave you a rundown of the ones that I did. I listened to Ransom's project again too. So let's go to Free Cutter with Jay Electronica. That's West Side bringing somebody the caliber of Jay Electronica into his world.
I was just gonna say that. I agree with you.
So even though Electronica gets off, it still feel like West Side record and West Side songs. And most of the great collaborations on there still feel that way. Like Vogue cover with Stove, no, that still feel like that's West Side. Like,
Yeah,
you know
like
what I
if
mean?
I heard
Spoon.
these songs like straight up, I would probably be like, yeah, that's a West Side song. You know what I'm
Right,
saying? But if I heard the
right,
Russ songs, I wouldn't know whose project it's on.
right. And
Yeah.
also too, Mike, if we're just going song for song, the best songs on part one and part two of Hitler Wears Hermes 8 is better than the best songs on Russ's project.
I mean,
So the
again, I've
verses, the
said
verses lyrically might be better, but it's like, I mean, Mike, there's no Hell on Earth 2 on Russ's project.
no, no, that's real. But see, I said this even when we were talking about West Side's A and B. It's like it's just been tough for me to really rank that project just because of how much music it is, how many people are involved, and I really wish he would have either put both of them out at the same time, or
Right. I
just
just wish he would have
condensed it
condensed.
into one. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I
Like,
wish I wish he would have condensed, and here's why. Because like when I look at it, if I was picking like the 50 best songs this year, the album that would have the most songs that would make it would be Hitler Wears Hermes 8 side A and B. It's just long, it's inconsistent, it got released separately. But if we're just talking about songs, like if we're ranking the best 50 songs, it would be the album that has the most songs, actually. I mean, it's a double project, so it's a kind of a leg up thing, too. But
yeah,
like I told you, Mike, Spoons, Vogue Cover, Westheimer, Bash Money, Hell on
yeah,
Earth 2, Free Cutter,
yeah, man.
99 Averex. Like, that's 8 or 9 tracks that I named you, Mike. That no, those are 8 or 9 of the 50 best rap songs this year.
Let's get
So it's
back to
like,
Ross real quick. But yeah,
yeah,
I mean we can get back on that and you know what I'm saying where things rank among the year. What was some of the standout moments on the Ross album for you? I'm hearing people on here saying that "Richer Than I Ever Been" is the best song on there. What did you think was the best song just off first listen?
Mike, they're right. That's a moment. I was actually thinking that's one of Ross's best moments on the solo tip. Just like he's got a lot of stuff. Like Ross's catalog is beautiful because Ross has great solo records, Ross has great collaborations, Ross has great street records, Ross has great hits. Richer Than I Ever Been, you can chalk over as one of his great solo songs by himself. It's not Amsterdam, but it's the next step down from. And at this stage in his career, yeah, like I'm with them when like arguably Richer Than I Ever Been is up there. Outlaws is up there, Mike. Uh,
You
Rapper
did say
Estates
that.
Rapper Estates is dope. The Pulitzer, it's a dope project, Mike. I was actually thinking to myself, like, when was the last time he made an effort this good? Because I think the last project that he made that people really gravitated to was what's the one with Santorini, Greece, and Idols Become Rivals?
It'll come to me in a second. What do the people in the chat think? What do y'all think is the best song on this album? I'm seeing Little Havana on here. Um,
Little Havana's dope too, Mike. Like I said, there's shit everywhere. Like, how about this? This is how you know the album is dope. When you're done listening to it, you're not quite certain what the best song is yet. That makes you want to listen to it again. That means there's about 4 or 5 records on there that's pulling you like that. That means the project is dope, especially when it's only 12 songs.
well, you know what? I want to also play with this whole notion. I think you're talking about Rather You Than Me as far as the one with Santorini Green on it.
Yeah.
We already seen Rick Ross in a versus situation with 2 Chainz, and it was, Ross's catalog is overwhelming. And you say that Ross is the best beat picker
He is.
in hip hop.
Are you listening to the tracks on this album?
Yeah, man.
Like you talk about the artists that get on the track and understanding the moment. Well, he understands that moment before they do.
I would say, yeah, that isn't a producer, and I guess that's what beat picking is when you're not the producer. It's hard for me to even think of anybody that I would put over him.
That's what I'm saying, because you can't think of anybody off the top of your head, and you're like, no, they pick better beats than Ross. No, they don't.
And the thing is, Ross doesn't always go with the hottest guy either, or the highest. Like,
He
I would
knows what
love to
works
know what
for
his
him.
process is like.
He knows what works for him, Mike.
Because at first,
So,
we were giving a lot of credence and a lot of credit to Justice League, as we should, because they've made some incredible music for Ross. But it's not just them. It's like this guy knows what to pick.
I
And
mean,